I took the plunge with 3 hours a week. That's all I had, as 3 hours a week of work. Class in Harpenden, a class in London, and a freelance, and a one-to-one class. And that was it, 3 hours. And initially I thought, ooh, swallow. But I don't know. I just thought, I'm going to do this. I mean, I had to do it, right? I had to pay the bills, and I didn't have a family or anything like that. I had a boyfriend and we had a house. But
this is Michelle Smith, who's a Pilates teacher and founder of the Pilates Pod, which is a classical Pilates studio. In this interview, we hear how health issues actually led Michelle away from her career in TV production and into Pilates, but how it was actually family that provided the impetus and the inspiration that she needed to build the business that she has today. I'm Jeremy Klein, and this is Change Work Life. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Change Work Life podcast, the show that's here to help you beat those Sunday evening blues. My guest this week is Michelle Smith, who has actually helped me experience firsthand just the benefits you can have of practicing Pilates. I do a regular office job and found that I was just starting to get backache just as a result of sitting in the same place for hour after hour. And Pilates, and through Michelle's help, has really made such a difference, so I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a really interesting story, this one. Michelle originally planned to go into physical education, but you'll hear how she ended up being put off that for really not very good reasons at all. But now she's effectively gone full circle and runs a very successful Pilates studio. So let's just get straight into the interview. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
So, for those that don't know you, and I'm sure there probably are a few, can you explain a bit about what you do and what you're about?
So I'm Michelle. I own a Pilates studio in Hitchin, Hertfordshire called the Pilates Pod. We're a classical Pilates studio, and I'm also a mentor for the classical teachers on the training program with Pi Studios in London.
Cool. So I'd certainly like to talk a bit more about that, the whole Pilates thing, the business thing in particular. But can we take a trip back through memory lane and talk about how you actually got here? Because you started out in TV production, is that right?
I did. So I always wanted to be in fitness. So at school, I was always very sporty and healthy minded, and went into netball and badminton as my sort of two main sports, and did those as county level. Went to college to become a PE teacher, but had some difficulties at college with other people being not very nice to me. I had bullying at school. It continued into college, and I had some horribleness with some blokes, and that put me right off education, to be honest. And so I decided I didn't want to continue education, even though I would like to have still been the PE teacher. And I completely changed course and went to work for Whitbread, where my uncle worked, and had my first taste of money. And for the season of summer holidays, thought, this is good, I can earn money. So I quickly decided, I'm going to get a job. And I think when I told my parents I wasn't going to university and there wasn't a huge amount of debt, they were actually sighed relief. But I thought, what do I actually want to do? What am I interested in? And I just started flicking through adverts and papers, and nothing looked very exciting. To be honest, I didn't really, there was nothing really caught my attention until I saw an advert for the BBC. As it turned out, it wasn't an advert for the BBC, it was an advert for Office Angels, and they were recruiting for a number of different companies, of which the BBC, one of their clients. I went along to what I thought was an interview for the BBC, but it was a typing test. And I pretty much blagged my typing test, because my typing was that kind of one finger quick little type. And I sort of blagged my typing test, having had quite a bad sort of allergy attack that morning of hay fever. Couldn't really see the screen, and the lady felt a bit sorry for me and bumped my scores up a bit. And I became a PA for the BBC, and quite quickly thought, oh dear, I'm way above myself here. What am I going to do? So my first entry into work life working for the BBC was quickly make friends and fake it till you make it. And I became a PA to the BBC. I learned how to touch type quickly. I learned how to send my first email. I hadn't even done that when I got there. And I became good friends with other PAs over a drink in the BBC bar. And any sort of creative work, I did it for them. Any sort of quick, fast typing stuff I needed churning out quickly, they did it for me, until they caught their talents up and I caught my talents up. And I stayed there for a number of years. So yeah, I was quite a high-flying PA for a very high senior management team in the BBC. And then I moved into internal web design and became an internet designer. And then I left to start sort of parading around London, and moved out into Australia and did some backpacking. And then when I came back, I thought I'd better get a real job, and decided I'd go back towards the BBC and end up working in production companies and doing TV world for Ralph Little's production company, which was called White Legs and Sniffer, and worked as their production assistant. And really, whilst they were in Africa doing a show, I was holding the fort for a few weeks, and that's all my job was. A couple of weeks of just holding the fort. But whilst they're away, and me sort of twiddling my thumbs and being the sort of type of person I am, I thought, I'm a bit bored, so I'll clean the place up and reorganise things. And then I thought, I must have some ideas. And I came up with some show ideas for TV and radio. When they came back, they were quite pleased with the show ideas, and we pitched them together to celebrities and to other TV companies and radio companies, and some of them took off. And so I got a job, and I stayed there as their sort of coordinator, researcher, anything you could turn your hand to job. And that was my sort of next entry into production.
Wow, that's quite a story in itself.
It's quite a story, yeah.
Can I just ask you, just going back on the backpacking around Australia, what was the motivation for sort of...
Heartbreak, Jeremy. It was heartbreak. My motivation was heartbreak. I broke up with my boyfriend, and I couldn't bear to be in the same country as him. And so a friend broke up with her boyfriend, and we decided, let's do this while we're still young. And although I think I was very aware that my job already at the BBC was a great job and it could have been greater, I already had done some work with CBBC, I'd done some presenting stuff, and I kind of got a taste of I could do a lot more of this. I'd done quite a lot of voluntary stuff myself in production companies and stuff for the BBC as well, and I probably could have carried on that line. I was just very young, and I was still only 20, 21 when I was at the BBC, and I thought, yeah, I've got to go and have a bit more, explore and spread my wings before I come back to the seriousness of jobs and things. So heartbreak led me to Australia, and it kind of led towards my turnaround for Pilates.
So, well, that's a great link in. So so you go to Australia, you come back, you move into TV production, coming up with all these ideas. Sounds like things are going pretty well in the whole TV production space. So talk us through the change into Pilates.
Yeah, so I'd had a car accident when I was at college, and the car accident left me with quite a bad back and neck. And so I was really suffering with that for quite a long time. And I was relying on the NHS physio, relying on the standard care, the TENS machine and the painkillers to fix me. And I will say, that with speech mark inverted commas, because it didn't fix me, and I just relied on them to fix me. And when I moved to Australia, I didn't really think about it too much. It was just the way I was living with this pain. Luckily for me, my gym had a Pilates studio inside it. So I started doing mat work Pilates there, didn't like it, didn't get it. And then I moved on to doing apparatus. And when I brought in the apparatus and worked with the springs and worked on the reformers, it changed how I felt about Pilates. I understood it a lot more, and I got a lot more benefit from it. And that's how my love fell about into Pilates. So I decided whilst I was in Australia that when I came back, I was either going to set up a production company and go back into doing media, or have a Pilates business. And I was going to call it Karma Junkies, because that was that was a section on a radio station that I liked in Australia called Nova 969. And they had karma junkies. And it was all about these two guys that would go around spreading good karma to people. And I thought it was a nice ethos. And I liked that ethos and I liked the name. And I thought, addicted to spreading karma, I'm going to spread the karma for how I've become healed and fixed through Pilates, and I'm going to continue to spread that love and pass on that heritage and work that he created of Joe Pilates, and pass it on myself through Karma Junkies. But I came home and I decided I don't think I am going to go back into TV production. It was quite an unstable job when I was working in freelance world. It was very week by week, and you would come to the end of the Friday and they'd say, okay, you can have another week, and it was a bit scary. And I thought I would probably need to pay off some money that I've accrued debts of living the high life in Australia, and I better start being a bit more sensible. So I decided to go with more of a longer term career plan, and went into Pilates and decided, yeah, I am going to do Karma Junkies. And I switched like that. So the instability went for a lot more instability. No job.
I was going to say, I mean, so you went from the instability of freelancing to the instability of starting your own. Was this the genesis of your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I had good contacts already in the BBC. Obviously, I was already very much established with people there. So initially, I set up classes in amongst all of the different BBC sites in their gyms. And so I would advertise Pilates classes, and I would work out of the gym to do one-to-ones, or I would hire the meeting rooms and do classes. So it gave me quite good bread and butter money to do that. And, you know, people knew me, and, you know, they go back recommendations. So people recommended me, and there was a cluster of BBC sites. You just travel around between them. And so that's really how it started. And I was still doing some of the production work just here and there for a bit of extra money. And then one day they just said, we're really struggling with money at the minute, and I don't know if we can keep you on. And I said, you know what, I think I want to take the plunge and go for this with my company. So, you know, we've had a great time, thanks very much, let's leave it there. And so I did. I took the plunge with 3 hours a week. That's all I had, as 3 hours a week of work. Class in Harpenden, a class in London, and a freelance, and a one-to-one class, and that was it, 3 hours. And initially I thought, ooh, swallow. But I don't know. I just thought, I'm going to do this. I mean, I had to do it, right? You know, I had to pay the bills, and I didn't have a family or anything like that. I had a boyfriend, and we had a house. But I just thought, well, I will make it. I will make the work. And reputation just went off, and I did. I made the work. So it kind of just took off from then. And it was really, I think, a turning point. I've been working for, you know, the gyms and stuff, doing classes there. And I got called one day by Watford Football Club and asked if I would come and chat to their head physio. And I did, and told them all about Pilates and how it could work for the footballers. And they gave me a bit of a trial, and they loved it. The sessions, they loved it. And I stayed being the resident teacher for Pilates for Watford Football Club all the way through for several seasons. They got promoted. It was great. And Hertfordshire Life magazine got in touch with me, wanted to do a feature. I had a double page spread about my work with the football club. And then I got a call from who I thought was Paul Robinson from Neighbours. Is what I thought the phone call was. It was his wife. And she said, my husband is Paul Robinson, the England goalkeeper, and he and I would have seen your article and would like to do Pilates with you. We want to do it privately together in our house several times a week. And I thought, wow, no, you don't. Who makes those phone calls? Who gives you a phone call to say, we want you to come to our house and several times a week do one-to-ones? And I thought it was a joke. And so, to be completely honest, I thought somebody was having me on. I thought my brother was having me on. He's a big football fan. And so I kind of kept my cards quite close to my chest and said, oh, well, I'll check my diary. I'll see if I can fit you in, and I'll come back to you. Took the details and put the phone down, quickly found my brother, said, yeah, very funny. You know, told him who it was. And he said, no, seriously, that's the England goalkeeper. And I said, oh, So I quickly phoned them back and said, yeah, I just happened to be available. Yeah, no worries, I can do that. And I think that's when really things, took a little bit of a turn, and my sort of profile in Pilates sort of raised the game a little bit, obviously working from them. So that was a fantastic period of my life, and my interest of working with footballers has continued, and I still work with footballers to this day.
Okay, so what I would actually like to do is just take a bit of a step back to when you made the decision to actually start teaching Pilates. And you said that you'd started with the mat work, hadn't worked out very well, but then you'd started with the equipment and you'd really seen that make changes. Now, I think Pilates is brilliant. I've been practicing it for 15 years, but I can't see myself ever becoming a Pilates teacher. I just don't think it's for me. So I'm curious as to what took you from discovering this thing that was great for you to actually wanting to teach it to other people.
I mean, it purely, a couple of things really. I don't mind standing up and talking in front of people. Obviously, I sort of was going to become a PE teacher. Then I worked in media. I had done TV and radio presenting. So the idea of standing up in front of people and talking didn't fill me with great horror. So, and I know that is a case for a lot of people if they love Pilates, but they couldn't see themselves doing that. So that didn't fill me with horror. So that seemed fine. I genuinely had been bowled over by the benefits it had given me, and I was so passionate about it very early on that I just thought other people must love this and hear about this and experience what I've felt. So I wanted to pass on that joy. And the other thing was that I came back and started working as a Pilates teacher really because there wasn't many places that you could do Pilates sort of 20 years ago. So when I came back and decided, well, I do want to become a Pilates teacher, I first of all thought I'll go back and do some classes for myself. And living outside of London, there really wasn't much opportunity for you to do it. I'd been in Australia, hadn't really realised that it was quite far ahead, as they are in America, of where we were in the UK. And without me wanting to do a class back and forward to London, there wasn't much opportunity for me to be able to do one. So kind of a bit naively to begin with, I thought I'll just become a teacher so that I can learn how to do it for myself. And if I pass that benefit on to a few people, that's great. But I've got the skills to do my own classes for my own body, because there was no way I was going to let my body go back downhill again. So I actually thought I'll train to become a teacher so that I can just keep it up myself.
That's really interesting. So you kind of got into it because it was your own pain point. It was you wanting to do Pilates, not having the opportunity to do it local to where you wanted to. So you effectively filled that gap. Yeah,
for myself, I just turned myself into the person that I wanted to be taught by. Other people started to come along and it just sort of filled in from there. But originally I just kind of didn't even think necessarily I would go and teach it, just that I would learn the skills from learning how to become a teacher to teach myself so that I could maintain what I'd been doing and keep that benefit up. Otherwise I knew I'd be back to the physios to rely on them again.
Okay. And so you've built up this reputation, acting for working with England footballers and that sort of thing. How does this transition into actually creating your own base? So rather than presumably, I don't know, going around to other people, or I don't know whether you're hiring halls or that thing, what then makes you decide that actually you're going to make the investment? And I'm sure it must have been a substantial investment actually to have your own premises and start your own thing, your own pod.
Yeah. There was a midway point. So you're right. I was very much on the road. So I'd have quite a large client base eventually. And I was very much, had my diary and I'd be rushing here, see that client rushing back. And I spent a lot of time on the road in between. And, it's not very obviously organised for you. Clients don't just want all your sessions around Bedfordshire, then move towards Hertfordshire, teach there, move to London, teach there. You were back and forward. You'd have a client in London, go off to Hertfordshire, come back. Your day was all over the place, and a lot of your time was spent rushing. And I thought it was a bit ironic that I would be arriving to somebody's house or venue where I was supposed to be teaching them this well-being technique, and I felt exhausted and panicked and anxious because I might be late and did I forget something? And it also reached a bit of a point for a business sense that I could only be myself. There was only one of me. And even though I had more and more interest, I couldn't duplicate myself and I couldn't satisfy the demand. And I was only going to be able to reach a ceiling level of income because I could only teach as many people as I had hours for the day. And I didn't want to completely break my neck and work 24 hours a day. And so I had a halfway point where I took a job as a studio coordinator and then became their studio manager for another studio, and just happened to be in Harpenden asking around. I was asking about apparatus and someone said, I think there's a new spa studio that's opened and they have one reformer, and the rest is yoga classes, dance classes and Pilates classes. So I went there saying, I can do this. I do reformer, I do apparatus. And they were like, fantastic, great, because nobody was and they didn't know. And so I became a teacher for them and quickly had a number of hours. And I became their studio coordinator. And then with my natural kind of business kind of acumen and organisational skills, I sort of very much had a 25 hours bread and butter sort of job, whilst I could continue my Karma Junkies building profile up in one sense and be this sort of stable sense for them. And that was my halfway point. And I stayed doing that for 8 years, and I loved working for them, and we had great success, and we brought in lots more apparatus, and I helped develop their studio for them, ran the studio as the studio manager, and had a number of instructors working with us. So it gave me good training ground for what it's like to run your studio without having the financial worry of running the studio. And I could see very much what it was like, the stresses and strains behind the business. I worked very much with the directors, and I could see they were a family business, and I could see what it was like to have 85% of your income go on wages, for example. And I could see all those things that you don't necessarily know that happens. And it was just the birth of my first child. Dylan is now 8, that I thought, reevaluate. I went back part-time. It wasn't as flexible in the work-life balance as I kind of hoped it was going to be by being part-time. And as somebody who was the studio manager, I still was expected to do a number of things, to be on call when I wasn't working. And I would often have to come home with my child, and then I would get a phone call from a teacher. It would be my day off, but I'd have to go into work. And I couldn't really manage that with a small child. And it wasn't really working for us as a family. And I wanted to spread my wings a bit more, and I thought, yeah, this is the time. So over a bottle of wine in the garden, my husband and I decided, okay, let's do some sums. And we just did very basic sums on, you're earning this much. If you did it for yourself and you did X amount of one-to-ones, you could earn the same amount of money, and you'd have a lot more work-life balance. And that was the Pilates Pod born. And then work-life balance went a little bit out the window, to be honest, Jeremy. Because of the success of the Pilates Pod. So, but yeah, that was the original idea. We would have a studio. We started small, very, very sensibly. We worked outside of an osteopath clinic, and when they weren't using one of their rooms, we used it for a day a week, whilst I was also running the other studio still and looking after my son. So it became crazy life. But demand was huge. I took on another instructor. Demand was still huge. And after 3 months, I had to make the decision. Where was I going to go? Do I want to, turn away the demand and keep it small scale? Or am I going to go for this? And we thought, go big, go home. And so we arrived to where we are now at Bancroft, and found the premises, took out a loan, went for it. And that was, 8 years ago. And we're here still through recession. Woohoo!
Fantastic. That's an amazing story. It's really interesting. At the start of this interview, you talked about what I would describe as imposter syndrome when you started at the BBC. Have you felt any of that as you've gone through sort of the teaching, the studio managing, the starting your own thing? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
I mean, I think running your own business, there is a huge amount of imposter syndrome, because you don't know what you don't know. And unless you've got a lot of money to be able to put a whole management structure in place and hire the people who know what they're doing, let's face it, most people don't when they start out, you have to learn quickly on the job. So I very much became an imposter because I would be the teacher, and then I would have a different telephone voice to be my receptionist when the phone rang, which was just a separate mobile we took out. And then I would talk in the third person. My husband was our branding person. So we always had the Pilates Pod as a brand that people expected to see as a big sort of premises. And I think they were a little disappointed when they arrived to an osteopaths that had, their bits and pieces and a reformer in the corner and me. It wasn't quite the marketing branding that we sort of portrayed. And so I did juggle many hats. I would have a baby in one arm, pretending to be the receptionist for something else, and pretending that the computer had gone down because I couldn't quickly do the work that I needed to do whilst attend my baby at the same time. So I pretended to be lots of people to appear perhaps bigger than we were to start with. And I suppose to lie to myself that I'd got this together. I could do this. And I'm a big believer in sort of fake it till you make it, not in any kind of serious way. If you're a surgeon, you obviously have to have your skills. But, I've got my skills. I knew what I was talking about. I just needed to convince the rest of the world, really. So I, pretended that I was all these people until I could hire some more help and had some money to have more help. And then I would sort of spread out a bit. So, yeah, very much so. Just do that. I mean, in Pilates skills wise, never do I ever think fake it till you make it in that. I'm a huge believer on authenticity and, the training. There are no that's a lie. There are plenty of shortcuts, but I think you will be found out if you are taking the shortcuts. So for my sense in the Pilates teaching, it was always about getting closer and closer and closer to the source, getting truer and truer, deeper and deeper, and never being satisfied with the course, having done the course. It was a constant. I'm still training now, decades later. But the knowledge of running your business can be very much imposter syndrome, and just keep learning it. Learn by your mistakes. Don't do that again. That didn't work. Change that. Try it. Just keep trying, make mistakes, fail, learn from those, and pick it up again. And now we've got a team of people, but we're still learning on the job. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned your family a couple of times, and I know that they're clearly very, very dear to you. I mean, everyone's family is dear to them, but I mean, you feature them on your website and things like that. You've got your cute little cartoons of your kids. So can you talk a bit about how, not how you sort of juggle parenthood with the business, but how your family have influenced you, and what effect it's had on how your business and how you approach things has developed?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are a huge power source to me, and they are a huge influence to me. Obviously, the reason we started the Pilates Pod was because of the birth of my child. So if we didn't have Dylan, we wouldn't have the necessity or want or desire to have something that would provide flexibility or work-life balance. And it was something very early on we thought, this is something perhaps we can leave our children. This is something I wanted as a legacy. So Dylan very much was the driving force for me starting it. And I've always, from a very young age, called Dylan my barometer. And he is very good at measuring the pressure in the air, and that pressure is me. And I can sense, he still does it now, I can sense through his behaviour when he was a small child, if he was being good or bad, it was my atmosphere that I was creating, and that was driven by being overloaded and being overwhelmed with the multiple things that were going on. So looking at my own children has actually helped me to think, I'm becoming a bit, the balance of the scales is a bit skewed here, and I need to address that. So they've always been my constant influence. We expanded the business when we had Ruby, and she's come up to 3. So I don't know, there must be something in that psychologically, that I expand waistline and expand business at the same time. There's got to be some link in there. I think there is something about pregnant women have these creative impulses that happens when they're pregnant. So there must be something to do with that. But I think that's beautiful. I think it's lovely that I can blend them in. And they are very much part of what we do. We are very much, it's not Michelle's Pilates, it is the Pilates Pod, it is about the whole team. But the team for me are my husband, the driving force behind the branding, and my children behind the whole influence and everything we do. So they are there, featured proudly on our website.
Fantastic. Michelle, I could literally talk to you all day, but I'm conscious that we are coming up to time. I'd love it if you've got through this journey, any particular resource which just has really helped you out, just, whether it's a book or a course or just a quote, just something which you've looked at and has really helped you with what you've done.
I think there's a few things. I think if we're thinking about organisation and business and that kind of side of things, honestly, moving to Android and having Google Drive for me has been the complete life changer for me. I don't think I feel completely organised with Google Drive. Thank you, Google. Yeah, I just love it. We all use it as the team together. We all have sharing facilities on stuff together, and it works very well, communicating across the team and sharing things. So that's from an organisational point of view. For my own balance and mindset point of view, I have to balance my mind because I am very driven and I can very easily burn out. I quite enjoy the business side of things and I can quite easily go down that road. So for me, working and understanding more about Ayurveda, and I've been seeing an Ayurveda practitioner for a while now, and part of that has been meditation. So I very much enjoy doing Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey's 21-day meditation challenges that you can find on YouTube, and also just buying programs from them. And the Ayurvedic books that I love, I buy one of the leading Ayurveda specialists called Dr. Vasant Lad. He's the sort of specialist in Ayurveda. So I've kind of learned how to manage stress mindset through using those. And I suppose really for my own self, the sort of quote that I use, and it's my own quote, is invest in you. And that means for me, for training and education, I never trained to be a teacher because I thought it would make me money, or I thought that I should do it because it's the new fitness or fad thing, but that it was something that I believed in. I think if you invest in yourself like that, you'll always do well. But also you have to invest in your self-care alongside. So invest in yourself and you'll always have, you'll always be true to what you're doing.
Fantastic. And Michelle, where can people go to find out a bit more about you and the pod and everything that you do?
So the website is thepilatespod.co.uk. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, all at the same name. And also check out Your Body Rocks. We have a Facebook page called Your Body Rocks, which is our body positive celebration, and standing up to body shaming is something that I have discovered has been a horrible journey for me and personally been attacked by it. We are asking people to celebrate body positivity in all shapes and sizes, as we do in the pod and as we should do in life. So check out Your Body Rocks and get involved in painting some rocks.
Fantastic. I will put the links to all of those in the show notes. Michelle, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Jeremy.
I felt like there was almost a redemptive quality to Michelle's story. I mean, here she was planning to do physical education at university, but then got put off by insults of others. So really not a good reason for stopping the pursuit of what presumably at the time were her dreams. And yet, look at her now. She's running her own extremely successful physical education business. Unfortunately, scheduling meant that we didn't have time to discuss her Your Body Rocks campaign. I actually listened to another interview with Michelle on a different podcast where she explained how this campaign arose from people making some pretty outrageous comments to Michelle and about what she was doing and about her body and all that sort of thing. Really, really nasty stuff. But rather than shy away, what she's done is come out fighting and use the experience to start this campaign, which is it's intended to fight body shaming and celebrate the fact that quite simply everyone's body is different. So it's a fantastic campaign. I will link to the Facebook page for the campaign in the show notes, as well as to all the other links and resources that Michelle mentioned in the interview. And you'll find these at changeworklife.com/6. That's number 6. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. And I'll be back next week for another great interview on the Change Work Life podcast. You don't want to miss it, and I look forward to seeing you then. Cheers. Bye.